Hi everyone, today we're going to be making one of my favorite Chinese foods, 韭菜盒子. And in English that translates to chives pancakes. Okay, so let's start off with the dough. For the dough, we're going to be using all-purpose flour and water. This time I measured about 3 to 4 cups of flour. This will give you about 12 pancakes. So a fun fact in China is that when you cook, especially with flour, they don't really measure the ingredients. So here it all depends on how much you want to make, and you can always add a little bit more of the flour or the water. To be honest, I've made this recipe several times, and every time the amount of water and flour is different. So for this recipe, there is no right or wrong. Alright, so when you added all the flour, it's time to add water. So what you want to do is that you want to preheat the water, you want to boil it. So the first amount of water that you're going to add is boiling hot, as you can see. So you're going to add about 1 bowl of water. After adding the first bowl of water, take whatever you use to mix the dough. I normally use chopsticks for this. And you're going to mix the water and the flour together. Obviously, this amount of water is not going to be enough for your dough. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your bowl again, you're going to add some cold water and some hot water and make it into lukewarm water. You're going to take your lukewarm water and you're going to add it into your flour mix. So after adding it, you're just going to mix just like any other dough. So this time when you're adding the water, just add little by little and then mix it as you're adding. After adding all of the water into the flour, just mix it all together. Okay, so that's a lot of water and a lot of flour talk, so let's just fast forward. Okay, so at this point, I actually like to take the dough out of the bowl and mix it on the kitchen counter. But just a heads up, be careful the first time when you touch the dough, because remember, you just added really hot water to the dough. So you might be as dumb as me and actually touch the dough and burn your fingertips, which is not fun. While kneading the dough, make sure that you knead it properly so we're not left with any floury pieces in the dough. Alright, so let's fast forward one more time until we get the final result and we see what the dough should look like when it's done. So this is what your dough should look like when it's done kneading. Nice and smooth, make it into a bowl and put it into your bowl again. We're then going to let the dough rest for at least 40 minutes. I normally let it rest for longer than that, but at least 40 minutes. Okay, so while the dough is resting, you're going to get your chives out and you're going to start cleaning them. Make sure that you clean the chives properly and you get away any sort of mud or any dirt that's on it. So what I normally do is that I take a piece of tissue paper and clean up any dirt and then I rinse it under water. So once you rinsed off your chives, you're going to put it back onto your chopping board. I normally take a piece of tissue paper again and kind of wipe off the water, but it's very important that the chives are completely dry when you start cooking this dish. Alright, so what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to put the chives to the side and I'm going to let them air dry. So now we're going to start cooking the meat. So for this recipe, I use minced pork. But if you don't eat meat, these chives pancakes can be made without meat as well. So normally when cooking minced pork, there's always going to be some oil left in the pot. So what you're going to do is that you're going to take the minced pork and you're going to put it aside into another bowl. But what I normally do with this dish is that I leave the oil in the pot and I use it when I'm going to cook the eggs, which is coming up right next. So for the amount of dough that I made this time, I normally use 4 eggs. So when I cook the eggs, I normally don't add any new oil. I just use the oil that was left from the minced pork. So there might be some pieces of pork in the egg mixture, but that's totally fine because it's all going to be mixed together later anyways. So when the eggs are done, they're going to be looking like this. Make sure they're made into smaller pieces because that's what you want in the meat and egg mixture. So we're just going to give the eggs a final stir before we add them into the meat mixture. Now that the eggs and the meat have been mixed together, we're just going to mix it nicely and then we're going to put them to the side and we're going to let the mixture cool down. So this normally takes some time, so if you're in a hurry, what you can do is that you can put it into the fridge. By now your chives should also be more or less dry. If they're not dry, take some tissue paper and just kind of wipe off the leftover water that's on there. Once you made sure your chives are completely dry, start chopping up the chives, but you're going to make sure that you chop them into smaller pieces as we don't want any bigger pieces in the mixture. Okay, so by this time you can take your pork and egg mixture out of the fridge and see if it's cooled down. If it's cooled down, go ahead and add the chives into the mix. So go ahead and give that a nice little mix before we start with the spices. Okay, so for the spices, it's really up to you how much you want to add of each one of them. So we started off by adding Sichuan pepper, and then we continue with 5 spices, which is a Chinese spice mix, which can be found in any Asian supermarket. We then go ahead and add salt, chicken powder, sesame oil, and oyster sauce, and we give that a nice good mix. So after mixing it, go ahead and try it, taste it, see if you need to add any more salt or anything else. And by now your dough is also probably ready. So what I'm going to show you is how you roll out the dough. So let's be honest here, I am not a master. I have tried and I've learned and I've practiced and I've learned from my mother-in-law and I've learned from videos, but I'm still not 100% professional at this. So please bear with me. So you're going to be rolling out the dough and you're going to be ending up with a circle just like this. So once you're happy with your piece of dough, you're going to get your filling out, get a spoon, and you're going to start filling the dough. So you're going to just fill in the middle. It's going to be a little bit full. If not, it's just going to end up tasting doughy. So you're going to fill it just like that. A little bit more is okay. There we go. And we're going to fold it in half. So we're going to fold it just like when you're making dumplings. If you haven't done that before, just please follow the video. Just make sure that you close it properly. What you don't want is that the dough has any sort of holes and then the filling is going to be leaking out when you're cooking it. So make sure you close it properly. Use your fingers, use a fork if you want to. Just make sure that it's closed properly. Once done folding and checking that there is no holes, it's going to end up looking like a big dumpling. And for this part, don't give up if you can't do it on the first try. I've tried many times and failed many times. Once you're happy with your dumpling, put it to your chopping board and then just use your hands and softly flatten the dumpling. So this is what it's going to look like in the end. So now that we know how to make it, let's continue. Roll out your dough and fill your dumplings. And again, double check, triple check, make sure that there is no holes in the dough when you're done with your dumpling. Even though this part is very time consuming, it is going to be worth it. They're going to look amazing and they're going to taste amazing. So this is what they're going to look like once they're done and ready to cook. Now that your pan is hot, you're just going to add a little bit of oil. I normally don't add a lot. I just add in the beginning just to make sure that the first batch does not stick. So I'm going to add the pancakes. I normally add about 3 or 4 depending on how big they are. So with the pan that I'm using, I don't have to flip them because there's heat coming from the bottom and from the top. But if you're using a normal pan, please remember to flip because you don't want to have burnt pancakes. You know they're done by looking at the color, but also by feeling how crispy they are. So there you go. Dinner is ready.